Imagine a world where clocks don't exist, yet people still showed up on time for markets, prayers, and even battles. Sounds impossible, right? What if I told you medieval Europeans had mind-blowing ways to track time so precise they rivaled modern schedules? From burning candles to listening to church bells, their tricks were pure genius. Stick with me, and by the end of this video, you'll be shocked at how a society without ticking clocks kept their lives in perfect sync. Let's dive into the medieval world and uncover secrets that'll make you rethink time itself. Picture yourself in a bustling medieval village in England, circa 1300. The sun's rising, roosters are crowing, and you've got a day packed with chores, trade, and maybe a sneaky ale at the tavern. But how do you know when to start plowing the fields or when the market opens? No wristwatch, no phone, not even a sundial if it's cloudy. The answer lies in a web of clever techniques that medieval people, peasants, monks, and lords alike, mastered to carve order out of chaos. First up, let's talk about the sun, their ultimate timekeeper. They didn't just glance at the sky, they studied it like pros. Farmers and villagers used the sun's position to divide the day into rough chunks: dawn, midday, dusk. Ever heard of noon? It comes from the Latin nona, meaning the ninth hour of daylight, originally a time for prayers. Cool, right? Drop a comment below. What's the oldest timekeeping trick you've ever heard of? Now, relying on the sun sounds simple, but what about cloudy days or deep winter when daylight's scarce? Medieval Europeans didn't panic. They got creative. Enter the church bells, the heartbeat of every medieval town. Monasteries and churches rang bells at specific times for prayers, called the canonical hours, matins at midnight, lauds at dawn, vespers at dusk, and so on. These bells weren't just for monks. They echoed across fields and villages, signaling everyone to start or stop work. In places like York or Paris, you'd hear a bell and know, "Time to head to the market," or "Supper's soon." The system was so reliable that even today, some European towns still ring bells for tradition. Imagine living by the sound of bells instead of an alarm clock. Would you love that vibe or find it annoying? Share your thoughts in the comments. But bells weren't the only sound-based trick. In rural areas, people tuned into nature's rhythms. Roosters crowing at dawn were a universal wake-up call. In coastal towns, fishermen timed their outings by the tides, which follow the moon's cycle. Even birdsong played a role. Specific birds chirped at predictable times, like larks at sunrise. It's like the whole natural world was their clock. This makes you wonder, could you ditch your phone and live by nature's cues? Let me know below if you'd try it. Let's shift gears to something even more ingenious: candle clocks. Picture a monk in a chilly scriptorium scribbling manuscripts by flickering light. How does he know when to switch tasks or head to prayers? He lights a special candle marked with evenly spaced lines. Each line represented an hour or so as the candle burned down. These weren't random candles. Craftsmen made them with precise wax blends to burn at consistent rates. In wealthier households or monasteries, candle clocks were a status symbol, like owning a Rolex today. King Alfred the Great of England reportedly used them to divide his day between prayer, study, and ruling. The catch? You had to shield them from drafts to keep the timing accurate. Next time you light a candle, imagine using it to plan your day. Ever tried something like this? Drop a comment with your wildest timekeeping hack. Candle clocks were cool, but what about tracking longer periods, like weeks or months? Medieval people leaned heavily on the church calendar, a masterpiece of organization. Every day was tied to a saint's feast or a religious event, like St. Michael's Day or Candlemas. These weren't just holidays. They were timestamps. A farmer might say, "I'll pay my rent by St. John's Day," meaning June 24th. This system was so ingrained that even illiterate peasants knew the calendar by heart, thanks to sermons and community festivals. It's wild to think a whole society stayed on track without Google Calendar. What's your favorite historical holiday? Share it below and let's see which ones top the list. Now let's get to one of the most mind-bending tools, water clocks, or clepsydra. These were the high-tech gadgets of the Middle Ages, used in monasteries and royal courts. A water clock worked by letting water drip at a steady rate from one vessel to another, with markers showing elapsed time. Some were so advanced they triggered bells or figurines to move, like early automata. In places like Toledo or Florence, scholars used water clocks for astronomy, timing star movements to predict seasons. The downside? They froze in winter and needed constant refilling. Still, the fact that medieval engineers pulled this off without modern tech is straight up impressive. If you could bring back one medieval invention, would it be a water clock? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of precision, let's talk about how medieval people split their days into smaller chunks. Monks were the ultimate time nerds, dividing daylight into 7 prayer sessions based on Psalm 119, 7 times a day I praise you. This schedule, called the Divine Office, influenced secular life too. Merchants and craftsmen adopted similar routines, working in blocks of time signaled by bells or sunlight. In cities like London, guilds set strict hours. Bakers started before dawn, while tanners wrapped up by dusk. This wasn't just about discipline, it was survival. If you missed market hours, you missed income. Imagine your boss enforcing a schedule with no clock to check. How would you cope? Drop your thoughts below. But what about nighttime, when the sun and bells weren't enough? Medieval people got super resourceful. In monasteries, monks used star clocks, tracking constellations like Ursa Major to estimate hours. A monk might wake for matins by checking if certain stars had crossed the horizon. In households, people relied on sleep cycles. They practiced biphasic sleep, waking up midway through the night for chores or prayers, then sleeping again. This rhythm synced with their timekeeping tricks, like candles or water clocks. It's wild to think they hacked their biology to stay on schedule. Ever tried a split sleep schedule? Share your experience in the comments. Let's zoom out and talk about why this matters. Medieval timekeeping wasn't just about practicality, it shaped culture and mindset. Time was sacred, tied to God's order. Missing prayers or harvest deadlines wasn't just lazy, it was almost sinful. This obsession with time laid the groundwork for later inventions like mechanical clocks in the 1300s. Those early clocks, found in places like Salisbury Cathedral, were less about precision and more about celebrating human ingenuity. They were rare, clunky, and only for the elite, but they sparked a revolution. By the late Middle Ages, towns competed to build clock towers, like the one in Prague, turning time into a public spectacle. How cool is it that a world without clocks set the stage for our digital age? What's the oldest clock you've ever seen? Tell me below. Now, let's get personal. I've always been fascinated by how medieval people turned chaos into order. Growing up in a small town, I relied on church bells to know when dinner was ready, kinda like a medieval kid. Researching this, I was blown away by their ingenuity. Candle clocks, water drips, stargazing. It's like they were part MacGyver, part Einstein. My favorite discovery was how they used nature, like tides or birdsong, to stay on track. It makes me want to ditch my phone and try living like a medieval peasant for a day. Would you join me for that challenge? Drop a yes or no in the comments, and let's see who's brave enough. Before we wrap up, let's talk about how you can apply this today. Next time you're stressed about a deadline, channel your inner medieval monk. Set a candle timer for focus, or step outside and guess the time by the sun's position. You'll feel a connection to history and maybe even outsmart your smartwatch. Plus, it's a great party trick. If you try any of these hacks, film it and tag me. I'd love to see it. And here's a teaser. My next video dives into why medieval beds were so tiny you'd barely fit. Trust me, it's weirder than you think. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss it. To sum it up, medieval Europeans were timekeeping wizards. From bells to candles, water clocks to stars, they built a world where time flowed without a single tick-tock. It's a reminder that human creativity can solve any problem, even without tech. So, what's your biggest takeaway from this? Drop it in the comments, like this video, and share it with a friend who's always late. They need these tricks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious.